You know, he knew, because those people think of prosperity and many other things.
Yes.
So that's what I was talking about. And I think you are one of our politicians or intellectuals who would leave a lot of documents, even if you don't write a composed book, through interviews that you give and the writings that you make yourself. So how are you doing, Honorable?
No, I'm really fine.
Thank you so much for welcoming us into your beautiful home.
Beautiful, I hope. I hope.
It looks very dignifying. So it's the sign of history and hard work. So how are you feeling?
This is the best of my times, I think. Whatever has happened, I think this is the fattest all my life.
Okay.
I feel very relaxed.
Why so?
Well, you tune your spirit according to circumstances.
Okay.
Yes. When I left Parliament and they would not take me back into the judiciary immediately,
Okay.
I had to stay 19 months without a salary. And I just told myself, look, remain defiant. And as God would have it, this is the best period I've had in my life.
Okay.
I mean, even my aspect can betray that.
Okay. So when you say remain defiant, Honorable, what do you mean?
No, I didn't want to give way.
Okay.
That's to attune to people's ways.
Okay.
Yes, I remained myself. Because the intention, I believe, was to maybe squeeze me financially and maybe make me more flexible.
Okay.
But I remained with my principles. I think
Yes.
I have so remained.
Honorable, and now that you've experienced that, you going for months without salary, there are a lot of us who were civil servants who have left even monies that have not been paid in the system. With that experience, I think you having a little power, would you try to work for those people? Like this government owes me a lot of money. I was a civil servant teacher for 7-8 years. I never got money past the advance they saw that they gave me.
I'd be very willing to, but unfortunately our society is such that it's not even worthwhile starting. At the moment I'm talking, there are judgments upon judgments of the full bench of the Supreme Court that nobody now has time to look at.
Okay.
In fact, a minister simply tells you he or she is not bound by the Supreme Court.
Okay.
If the court can come out with a judgment which remains unenforced,
Okay.
it gives you an idea of where we are. If they cannot enforce a court judgment, then who are you to compel somebody to do what you think is right?
Okay. Honorable, the last time, I think it was December 2013 that we talked. I remember we had a little chat then. At that time, you were actually, I don't know whether it's a militant or one of the leaders of the Southern Cameroon's cause. If I'm coming to talk to you today, it's because of the respect and honor I have with you, even in disagreement. Because since that December, lately, you talk of principles and a lot of other things, people trying to squeeze you to submission, and you've not. But there are different camps of opinion with things that have transpired ever then. So I would like, normally it's always good to give a person, a power, intellectual like you, the opportunity to express certain sentiments, because it would be completely dishonest for us to sit here when there are misgivings. I should say that even myself, Christmas Ebini, must have fallen to a certain parameter of either discontent or criticism or whatever. I may be wrong, and I think this is an opportunity for us who don't understand to understand it. The it that I'm talking about is the concept of you being a big critic of this government, being now after a while, because they're trying to squeeze you, or they did squeeze you, into co-opting you. So the concept of co-optation comes, and when that happens, those of us, the people who had faith in you, would think that you are singing to a different tune?
Well, since you are not in the country, I may have to go over what I have said already. Some senior statesman has said over and over that Ayah is not a critic. Ayah is a contributor. I point out what's wrong, and I suggest what I think is more beneficial, at least to the majority of the people. At the end of 2009, I came out with the analysis of waste on fuel, and that it was unconscionable that the Secretary General in the presidency should have 2.5 million a day for fuel, including non-working days. And I went on to suggest, and I said that was wrong because the way Cameroonians would go for a whole day looking for 10 francs to buy Maggi cube. So as I've said, I always point out and then make a suggestion. So I went on to say that if they cut appropriation for fuel by half, they would employ 34,000 youth at 100,000 francs each per month.
Mm-hmm.
So many people called me names. At that time, the allocation was 103 billions. Now it has come down to 35 billions. And so the President of the Republic can proudly say that he has created, or he created 284,000 jobs in 2014. But that is from Paul Ayah.
Okay.
So I don't look at myself as a critic as such. Why did I take a certain stance, which is still my stance anyway? The President of the Republic of Cameroon, in his end-of-year speech, 2009, said the independence of Cameroon, the 50th anniversary of independence of Cameroon, refers to the independence of 1st January 1960. Prior to that speech, his Minister of Communication, the government spokesman, had said 1st October every year they did arrest some Cameroonians because they came out to celebrate their Independence Day. And that 1st October is not an Independence Day for Cameroon. The Independence Day is 1st January 1960. So the head of state came to endorse it. Even then, in 1990, they celebrated the 30th anniversary of independence to the exclusion of southern Cameroons. They came out with a map which excluded southern Cameroons. Even in speeches, they said it did not refer to what they called Anglophones. So this was symbolized in a postage stamp, which I have till today. So hanging on that, I said then, you are now agreeing with me that reunification is a fiction. What they call reunification is a fiction. Because if there was, then, as it has happened elsewhere, between Tanganyika and Zanzibar, when they came together, Tanganyika, which had been independent, forgot about its date of independence. It was the new date now because it's a new state.
Mm-hmm.
And then reading it into Article 102 of the UN Charter, if you are saying that your Independence Day is 1st January 1960, it means there is no Cameroon which includes southern Cameroons. Because 1st January 1960, the Cameroon that had independence did not include southern Cameroons. If that remains the Independence Day of Cameroon, then the Cameroon you are talking about does not include southern Cameroons. And that's my position till today.
Okay.
So I published a number of articles, which apparently led many more Southern Cameroonians to see the point I was making. And that maybe gave me some credibility in their eyes. But speaking the truth, I have never been a member of any, maybe liberation, in quotes, liberation movement. I've never been. I was invited by a number of groups to take leadership because they saw credibility in what I was saying. They saw maybe courage in my posture. They saw a number of things which impressed them. SCNC stood for what? All Anglophone conferences came out with a document. We are marginalized. Let us sit at the table and come up with a new Cameroon where we will feel, as part of. Came out with a document and submitted to the President of the Republic. Years after, the President will not even acknowledge receipt. And they continue to ask for dialogue. If you look at the motto of SCNC, that's the force of argument, not the argument of force, is dialogue. And I identified with that thinking. But I have never registered with any movement. So what we stood for, and I think that is still the thinking of a good many Cameroonians, is that as it is recommended by the Secretary General of the United Nations, by the President of the General Assembly, by a subsidiary organ of the United Nations, that's African Commission for People and Human and People's Rights, they recommended dialogue. The last mentioned body, African Commission for Human and People's Rights, went on to recognize Southern Cameroonians as a people. A country is territory, people, government. So already Southern Cameroonians are 2/3 into statehood. But let us sit down, since there is no reunification, and agree on new terms of our being together. If we cannot agree, then we go our different ways. It is because of the repression. They don't want anybody to talk about, how can you be chastising anybody who is recommending dialogue, anybody who stands for dialogue? You are saying you should stand for violence, because that's the opposite. So it is because of the repression meted out on people who are out for dialogue that people say, okay, if so it is, you don't want us, we want to be on our own. That is the argument, because up to the moment I am talking, the Constitution, the real aim of SCNC is for dialogue. Maybe, as it is said in common parlance, aim high even if you shoot low. If they are talking about statehood, that is just maybe a proposal. We want statehood since you don't want us. But what we've asked for and what we are asking for is dialogue, as recommended by international bodies.
Honorable, we are recording very good documents of you. You and I tomorrow can drop dead. And when I appreciate people, even though I disagree with people like Von Mukete and Bile, that before a person like Bile, even if you doubt his version, he left something. So documents like this are very important documents. So, but when you say certain things, I hear you speaking the language of SCNC. But under it, I'm hearing you say you don't stand for what SCNC stands for. There's a piece of the dialogue But we know that SCNC has advanced from that dialogue was intended from the All Anglophone Conference.
Yes.
And that All Anglophone Conference was the contribution of Southern Cameroons or West Cameroon or Anglophone Cameroons towards the tripartite constitutional committee that was set up.
Indeed.
And it stood for federation. All of us know that majority of people who militate actively today in SCNC are opting for the autonomy or independence of Southern Cameroons. The dialogue piece, or should I say that that part you minimize it because you think that is just a thing to aim high, and if something comes below here they'll take?
I am convinced. I've chatted with so many leaders of Southern Cameroons. I prefer Southern Cameroons because we don't know today who is an Anglophone. There are so many people who speak English. So to be very distinct, we talk of Southern Cameroons.
Not Anglophone.
I've chatted with very high-ranking members of Southern Cameroons, both within the country and abroad. Till today, the motto of SCNC is the force of argument, not the argument of force. Argument is what? Let us sit down and talk. Let us dialogue. I doubt how many members of SCNC, properly speaking, are talking about independence as such. The primary thing is dialogue. It is when we fail that we now say, well, since we cannot be together, let us go our different ways. From the dialogue table. Until SCNC changes its motto, I do not believe that there is anything outside there saying, let us dialogue. If they don't want dialogue, they will not be invoking the judgment, that's the Banjul ruling, which called for dialogue and recognized us as a people. So as much as there may be coincidence in the language as you are saying, I do not believe that there is any divergence between SCNC stance and mine as such, because the moment they call for dialogue, we present our points in truth and fearlessly, just as I'm talking now, I'm talking before a camera. It's going until there's something that destroys what we're saying today, it will remain there. So, I would very much doubt if people have departed from dialogue to something else. You cannot talk about statehood. In fact, to put it bluntly, there is no liberation movement without an armed wing. If up to now, SCNC has decided not to have an armed wing, I believe that it is because it is for dialogue.
Out of lack of opportunity.
If the opportunity doesn't come, you get to a point where, in fact, in every aspect of life, there's a saturation point. This is a saturation point for dialogue. This is for every aspect of life. So, up to the moment I am talking, I am convinced that what we are out for is dialogue. I have, speaking for myself, seen what's happening around the world. And I know that in the event of a conflict, the people who suffer are the innocent people. We have no right to decide for them because they've not even given us their mandate. So it will take time for anybody to think about plunging, a community into conflict. You talked about co-option. No, nobody co-opts Ayah. I am a legal person, and I know that the law makes allowance for a magistrate to go on what they call, let me use the translate word for word, detachment. They can detach you from the magistracy to something else, such as I went into the National Assembly. During the period of detachment, you remain a member of your principal corps, your previous corps. At the end of the period of detachment, you are reabsorbed into the corps automatically. In fact, that's the word used in the law, automatically. So my going back to the judiciary is as of course. That is the law. So as of now, there is nothing called co-option. Nobody could co-opt me. I'm a member of the judiciary. I went in 78, and maybe for your information, I have gone to the highest point. In fact, since 1st July last year, I got to the highest point. There can be no promotion for me anymore. That has nothing to do with politics. It's a career. And that's why I am where I am today. I am not saying that if tomorrow the powers that be saw merits in me and thought that I could serve in a better way, I would decide not to. I'm not saying that. Because when we draw the analogy as we've done before, while people were fighting for independence, they were still serving the colonial administration. I don't see why there should be any difference now. If there's a difference because the government of Cameroon as it is now is more or less ruthless, because it's not a government for dialogue, everybody knows that. Our government doesn't go for dialogue. Even just last week, people wanted to come out and demonstrate, march in the streets peacefully against the French CFA. They sent out the army to go and batter them. So our government is not a government of dialogue. If they are saying that the government is as it is now and therefore we should not identify with, I would simply say, but the colonial masters did similar things. They killed, they imprisoned. We still dialogued with them and secured our independence. Autonomy may not really mean not being part of Cameroon. We can be part of Cameroon in a federation. And as a political leader, I came out with a small pamphlet for a 10-state federation. So I am still, maybe I am for now, a little away from politics, but I'm still a political leader, and I still stand by what I think is the best thing for Cameroon, a 10-state federation.
Honorable, you're saying a lot of nice things, and since we're doing unstructured interview, I don't come to you with any questions, and I generate my questions from the information that you provide.
Yes.
Now, would you ever become a member of SCNC?
I have said that SCNC is not organized.
Okay.
SCNC is in far too many factions. In fact, my last interview on that aspect was published, I think just a month ago or less, about a month ago. They are not organized. If they were organized and they found that I could make a contribution towards resolving the present illegality, it's total illegality, because if nothing brings us together in the form of a document as required by the United Nations, that if after independence some other territory joins you, it must be evidenced in writing and the document notified to the Secretariat of the UN. If there is no such document, then it is an illegality. And therefore, if at any time I see that there's seriousness in SCNC, there's unity of purpose. Not only SCNC, because there are other branches which have broken off. And I see that there's unity of purpose. Why not? I should go in there, make my own contribution towards resolving peacefully what, whether we like or not, may one day explode into a conflict.
So can you tell us what is your new appointment you just had in the judiciary system?
Yes, at the level, to make people understand well, at the level of the magistrates' courts, we have the president and his assistants who preside, who are members of the bench, to use the technical word. They sit down and take decisions, final decisions. You have the legal department with the state counsel as the head and deputy state counsel under him, who go and prosecute. Unlike the English system where lawyers do everything, here we have a distinct service for prosecution, the department of, the legal department at the court of first instance.
Okay.
At the high court is the same as the court of first instance. But at the level of the court of appeal, you have the same two arms of the court, the presiding magistrates and magistrates of the legal department. Maybe we'll call them judges elsewhere, but here they say magistrate all through. So you have those of the legal department at the level of the court of appeal. The difference is that at the level of the court of appeal, there are people there between the equivalent of the state counsel, the counterpart of the state counsel, who is now called Procureur General,
okay,
and his deputy.
So that's like a state counsel?
Yes.
In the equivalent of in the US also?
Yes. So at the level of the court of appeal, there is a number of judges between the state counsel and his deputies called Avocat General. It's difficult to translate into English. That's exactly how it is in the Supreme Court. They have the judges of the bench and then of the legal department.
Okay.
So at the level of the legal department, there's the Procureur General, who is the equivalent of the state counsel, and then the Avocat General that I am are between him and, in fact, there are no substitute general. The rest of Avocat General. So depending on your rank, you can be the first Avocat General, the second, the third. People are now just according to the seniority.
Okay.
So at the level of the legal department in the Supreme Court, there's the Procureur General, and after him by seniority, it is me.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and your intellect is not in doubt in any way. I don't think there's anybody who would dare to challenge that. And you might mention these high positions that is occupied here. Somebody with even your qualification and your rights as a person who has served in the civil service, you rose. But for you to be in the position in which you are today, it's out of the pleasure of somebody who appointed you a president. So what is the relevance of most of these intellectuals and those positions when one human being in the country serves as the constitution and all the power? So what powers do you really have with this appointment? I mean, there's so much injustice in this country. We know that, yet we have intelligent judges who know the law and everything, but laws are broken. I traveled yesterday and I was stopped at night. I did not have my passport with me. I had a U.S. driver's license because I keep my passport. They stole it the other time. All they wanted is for me to bribe. I say even 100 francs I will not bribe. I will stay with them at night there until they go bring my passport. So we all somehow enable the system. And partly I can understand you. Some of the other people cannot understand. Even you're deserving of the position that you accepted through appointment from Mr. Paul Biya.
Well, I've already said that as a matter of law, I am a member of the Judiciary. I do not believe that people are appointed at the pleasure of the President of the Republic as such.
Okay.
If he is the head of the Judicial Council, that's true. At the level of promotions, if he does that, yes. After promotions, he must put you where you ought to be.
Okay.
If not, it is in error and it has to be corrected. Like in my case now, it has to be corrected.
Because Honorable, everything in this country is in error. There's nothing that is done justly or the way it might have been written in any book. We know that.
No, it is eventually corrected. In the judiciary as in the army,
okay,
the seniority is so well programmed that even if you agree in all aspects they would draw lots so that one must be senior to the other.
Is it part of the system that generals remain in service forever while young, energetic military people go on retirement?
No, well, that is, I wouldn't know what happens in the army. I'm talking of the judiciary.
Okay.
Yes. So in the judiciary, so it is. Now, as it is, you asked, there are people intellectually good, they know the law, but there's still injustice everywhere. Why not? I have told you that there are judgments of the Supreme Court, the full bench of the Supreme Court, and the government is the first party to throw them in the waste basket. But that is no excuse for any member of the judiciary not to do his job. When they talk about independence of the judiciary, it's not a matter of the law saying it. It is a matter of the individual judges exercising independence. For the time I've been in the judiciary, I think anybody who has appeared before me would vouch that I stood by my independence, using my conscience and the law alone. There are people in the judiciary, even today, who will do that and suffer, of course, in terms of promotion, in terms of appointments and so on. Just in parentheses, all through my career in the judiciary, I pushed vehicles as a grade 1 magistrate from Kambe. As a grade 2, I pushed from sort of Jakiri. Grade 3, I pushed from Wum to Fundong. Grade 4 already, I pushed from Kumba Tundian. So, as a member of the judiciary and in keeping with your oath, that should not make you flinch. So there are magistrates who are prepared to stand their ground. But then, after doing all that, the judgment is not enforced. Even now, my senior in the Bilingual Grammar School has a judgment against a company, and for 6 years it cannot be enforced because it is claimed that that company has majority shares from the government, so they cannot enforce it. I have seen a document saying that a judgment cannot be enforced against a council in Cameroon. So just to show you that as much as those intellectuals are there in the judiciary, as much as they have the courage to assert their independence, as much as they come out with good judgments, there will still be injustice in Cameroon because the executive arm of the government is frustrating everything.
So can I then, by the law in this country, whether it exists or it doesn't exist, can I or any private citizen sue the president for all these crimes?
Out of Cameroon, yes.
Out of Cameroon, not in Cameroon.
In Cameroon, it will be. First of all, there will be very few magistrates who will be willing to hear it. Even lawyers who will be willing to stand in court, and there are very few of us who will be bold enough. But then remember, I've just talked about the ruling of the Banjul African Commission on Human and People's Rights. They came out with the ruling, and the president has put it in the waste basket till today.
Honorable, do you believe that Paul Biya is a constitutional criminal in this country?
Well, it's not for me to judge. The day he appears before me, I'll come out with a wonderful judgment, depending on the facts before me. But what I am saying is, if you are a leader and people under you go against the law and you keep quiet, the English would invoke the word connivance. That you are giving tacit approval. And once you give tacit approval, you are encouraging more commission of crimes.
Which relates to all the other people working under him, either in a party or what, because they are enablers too, right?
I didn't quite get it.
I said that would translate to all the people who know this truth, but they have supported him to violate the constitution, to violate the law, to steal from the country, to not even live in this country, because Paul Biya does not live in Cameroon. He only comes in here to take money and go and stay outside. So that those are crimes, and yet there are people amongst us who enable that. That's what I'm saying. Are they also guilty of all of this?
Well, the word resign does not exist in Cameroon,
Okay.
except in very rare circumstances. I've resigned a number of times, right from college. I've resigned, and nothing adverse has happened to me. But there are people who are afraid to resign. The law will not take that into consideration. If you remain there, you are endorsing. Because there are two ways of committing a crime, by commission or by omission. If you are there, you know that a thing is wrong, and you are afraid to resign. I remember that my friend Mr. Marafa said a number of times he wanted to resign, but they refused. You tender your resignation. And that's what I did. I don't think that there is a law in Cameroon that for you to resign, you must obtain permission. You tender your resignation. If you don't, then of course, you are a member, you are a party.
So now you have been appointed. Even though we use the word appointment, that's the system, the way it is structured. Deserving. You deserve even to be president of this country without stooping to anybody's appointment. From your intellectual, this thing, and the services that you have rendered to the nation. And for some degree of bold stance against some of the things that are being done, like Bia's constitutional crime in 2008, to change the constitution in order to remain in power. You were the sole legislative voice that stood against that. I know right now, I want to be very sensitive and understanding. And I want to commend you that I'm sure if I told anybody that I was going to come here and do an interview with Paul Ayah at this time, after what they said, all the things and all the sentiments that people have towards your actions, in understanding or misunderstanding, they will not believe that you probably sit and say some of the things that you're saying. But I do also understand that with the system, you might want to do a lot of things that your hands are tied, right?
I do not know. First of all, I'm not in a position to take a final judgment. I only submit.
Okay. But you've not started doing any work yet since you've been
No, not yet. As I've told you, even the bosses have not yet occupied their offices.
Yes.
So properly speaking, they are not working. So...
But you are being paid?
Of course, if they obstruct you from doing your work, you are willing to, and somebody says, just wait.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay.
I've not had a salary, as I've said, for 19 months, but I know that it's going to come.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm being paid.
Okay.
So, as I've said, that's that. Then at the level of the legal department, there's some kind of funny thing they call subordination hiérarchique. That's to say, they will tell you that in this case, this is the argument must go in this direction. You must submit in this direction. Yet, I know that there are two ways, which can help you out of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
One is that equity prevails over the law. If there's conflict between equity and the law, equity must prevail, and equity is the conscience.
Okay, for people who don't know, equity is the conscience.
In fact, that is the real equity. Okay. That even though the law says like this, the way it is, I think. No. So you can invoke equity in a situation like that. The second thing is that you can ask them, you can decline and tell them to assign to somebody else because it conflicts with their conscience. But I know that every magistrate takes oath of office before, at the time of joining the profession. And that oath says that, especially if you're on the bench, you are subject only to your conscience and the law. So as much as there may be interferences from wherever, a magistrate should stand by his conscience. Where I am, as I've said, there may be their subordination hierarchy, but I will always do what I think is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
On the eve of your appointment, there was news all over the place that you were the new leader of SCNC. There was a meeting that was held and you were appointed leader. No statement came from you concerning that. The statement that we heard later on from you was when you accepted your position, and you did castigate SCNC a little bit, that they're a bunch of noisemakers. And one of the things too that you complained about is that people wanted you to stay hungry.
No. Well, the journalists could interpret things the way they understood. When I was appointed, the first thing is that I programmed to go to the village for Christmas. When I came back, I granted an interview saying that I was not accepting my position and that in compliance with the law, as soon as my detachment in the National Assembly had ended, I submitted a document that the law requires that I come back into the judiciary. If they didn't take me into the judiciary immediately, I wouldn't say why. So I went back in compliance with the law, not accepting a position. And when I was interviewed, I said I could not mix up an issue as important as SCNC with the issue of my appointment. And that I was going to speak on the SCNC later. And that's what I did. I did later. And when I did later, I was very explicit that I could not accept the position of not just SCNC. There were other groups, Scalpel. They came to my house, they came to my office, they met me, they sent letters and so on. And I said I could not accept the position in SCNC because it had too many factions. There were at least 5 factions. At the same time, there was a current of opinion from the Northwest that the Northwest would not accept any person from the Southwest again as SCNC leader. Then my friend, Mr. Nfongara, or whatever, said even in Ayamba's lifetime, Ayamba was the leader of SCNC, even in Ayamba's lifetime, he had sent Ayamba on retirement and assumed the position of national chairman of SCNC. So when I put all those things together, I saw that going there was, going to get into some kind of mess. I've used any adjective maybe to say they were noisemakers. So I decided not to. When it was published, some journalists even published excerpts of a speech I made in Kumba. When SCNC met in Kumba, if they did meet, I was here in Buea. On that particular day, I did not even go down to Bonduma. I moved from here to go and file a document in the Court of Appeal, and I met colleagues there. We chatted for 4 hours. I did not leave Buea that particular day. So it was, first of all, properly speaking, not an election, because SCNC, as I've said, was in factions, and we don't know how many factions did the election.
So you think this disorganization and this some degree of even intolerance and misunderstanding even of what this liberation thing is all about, you think SCNC might have done a great disservice to the Southern Cameroon's cause?
I think so. I think so, because there are a lot of factions, and there's more infighting than facing the common adversary. Let me call him adversary. There's more infighting than facing the common adversary. And apart from the SCNC itself doing a disservice to the cause it stands for, there is a certain Dr. Chia, who has convinced people that SCNC is of no use and that they will achieve nothing. that the United Nations or the Secretary General of the UN has handed over British Cameroons to him. To him, it's not a matter of Southern Cameroon, but British Cameroons. That's to say, former British Northern Cameroons and then British Southern Cameroons. So, as a result of that doctrine, and I know he's selling something he calls the United Nations identity card to people. I don't know when he used such documents and for what purpose. So that in itself has drawn a lot of people away from SCNC, or maybe the cause of wanting to dialogue. So people are waiting for the UN. Each time they see UN vehicles maybe going to Central Africa, people jubilate that the UN has finally come in to send away the Cameroonese soldiers and whatever. So that, coupled with the fact that SCNC is in fact too many factions. Recently, I heard the son of Ayamba proclaimed himself to one of the national, or the only national chairman. So in all that, they have weakened the cause. Because if tomorrow, for instance, Mr. Biya, under pressure from the international community, says, okay, I'm now ready to dialogue with SCNC, because the body that the African Commission on Human and People's Rights recommended dialogue with is SCNC. It's very clear, it's there. So if tomorrow Biya says, I'm not prepared for dialogue, even as a political strategy, who comes forward?
Nobody. So, Honorable, on that note, I did read on your Facebook page a posting that you made, and you sounded a little frustrated and angry, maybe from some attacks that you might have gotten from some angle. And I read such noise, such statements like Jiga infested, people of no caliber and some other things. Were you angry then?
Well, the first thing is to know is that my Facebook has a team of people managing it.
Oh, good.
Yes, at times they publish things and we have
that you don't agree with?
Yes, at times. But most often they ask me.
Okay.
Most often. There are times too I may be out of network, like when I'm in Akwaya. Not all Akwaya has network. They can publish things without me knowing. Without asking for my approval.
Okay.
But to say that
is a very good information. You know that, because.
But to say that, to ask whether I was angry or not. As a human being, even in the Bible I read about God, God's terrible anger. To be angry is very human, because it makes no sense that the very people who said they didn't want a Southwesterner elected national chairman are those who would go for 4 months or more calling you traitor and all that. There's the reason, you get to a point and you get angry, because you see that helps to drive a wedge between the Northwest and the Southwest. And then the ordinary Southwesterner says, look at what's happening in Southern Sudan. If we've not yet gained independence and we're having this kind of situation. So it discourages people from supporting the cause this way.
Okay.
And that's very clear. I believe that if you conduct a free and fair opinion poll here, a good many people will tell you that they are discouraged. They don't believe that would see peace. No.
Yeah. So, Honorable, you say you have people who post things on your behalf.
Yes.
So do you read through any of those things before they post them, or you just authorize them to post them?
No, I cannot read. I cannot read. I never read. At times they ask me this is what they want to post, and I say, yes, go ahead. Yeah. Or want to write on this topic, I say, go ahead. When they said, for instance, that they were going to write to somebody who made Hong Kong what it is, I just say, they say, go ahead. I don't get into the details as to what word to use and how it is done, the length. No, I don't.
There's your image they are presenting. It's For instance, I'm hearing this when I read the Jiga Infested. I was expecting you, well, I shouldn't be expecting. I was thinking that you come and denounce a person like Raymond Akonson, whom I think he gets very excited doing no work. When he wrote, when these controversies, you are Honorable Paul Ayah. This country is full of intellectuals. It's not because of your legal expertise or intellect. We could have a lot of those people, but you stood out. You went into the people and placed yourself on a different category. And so, either rightly or wrongly, they had a different set of expectations of you. What you explained to me for me to understand, because you give me the honor to grant this interview and we are chatting, would not be the same way people who don't have access to you would understand certain actions, especially when they are public. Like you being here today and then castigating this government and beer, and it gives you something what is rightly yours, and you take it. Some people will not understand that. So when that came, it was the provocation. It's part of the sentiments. I think people were muted. Some of the people who were talking, I'm talking more on the level of the social media. Yes. Because to tell you the truth, we out there in the diaspora know a person like Rebona Akonson than people in his own village. I'm coming from Ayah, we are from Kokonok, the same area. If you go to my father's house up to now, your poster is still there when you enter in the veranda. Your electoral poster. So people know him. Those of us who are on the internet, outside, who don't have anything to do with elections here, than he is known here on the ground. So there's a lot of time that is wasted there without really planting the seeds of the party. So he came, and when there were all these sentiments, before even people, it's what he wrote. He came and wrote something about the northern zone people always causing trouble against the southern zones.
They didn't as much as read that.
Yes, he said that. That's the first time I read. So what led me from what he wrote, I said that Honorable would have really distanced himself from what this boy is writing. But when I read Jiga Invested, I said that we in the Southwest don't have much to do with Jiga.
We have a lot here.
Somebody told me that because I didn't experience it, but somebody corrected me on that we do have Jiga Invested. Yes, so I corrected that a little bit. So that's what I felt. But he did right. And talking to you, I would say that no matter how objective you want to be, you have distanced yourself, or they have planted some mistrust in you about this Northwest-Southwest issue. From Galangala, talking about who can be or positions and all that kind of stuff, and then shifting you to taking the sweller position of 10-state federation. Because that's what Mullah, before Mullah jumped into Jumba marriage, that is what he was with his party, political party initially. So all of these things, last time we talked, we could agree that even in the judiciary term, if the Northwest and Southwest had firm collaborative political collaboration, some of these things would not happen. So we see these things keep deepening, and when I talk to you, you would not be a person who is like a gutter top kind of person. So you will say it in very nice words, but the hole is there, right?
No, there is no doubt that the hole is there. I mean, I think that one of the things that we're trying to do now on the political arena is to get to a certain degree of truth. The hole is there. There are people who are making capital from the situation as it is, and they would want the stalemate to continue as much as possible. And I do not believe that those people are necessarily not of Southern Cameroon's extraction. There are people among us who want the stalemate to continue. And so they take certain actions that can only deepen the division,
Okay.
the rift between us. I also think that some people are not mature enough. It's not every old man who is mature. Some people are not mature enough to stop being parochial, thinking that nothing good can come from certain areas, or thinking that we are always right, or thinking that the majority are always right. I read a poem, I think it's by Dryden, that the many can be as grossly wrong as the few. So until people look into some of these aspects, it doesn't tell a good story for our unity of purpose.
So how do we get that result? Because we know that it is affecting us, our moving forward. I've always used the example in my own era when we got together for the GCE board.
Look, if you, I mean, you are in the United States. There are some people in the United States who may have been there 20, 30 years, but they are still very, very local. I mean, their thinking is still very local. You see, they keep whipping up passions. So when you ask me that kind of question, it's very difficult for me to give you an answer until they pipe down and broaden their minds to believe that Jesus was not born in Jerusalem. We may end up, playing instead into the enemy's den. I don't know what answer I can give you, but there are some individuals in the United States in particular whose, I don't know what delight they derive from always fanning our differences. That's the dichotomy, perhaps not dichotomy properly speaking, but the rift between the northern zone and the southern zone. Each time they go to the press, you read, even without reading between the lines, something which tells some people that, properly speaking, we can do without.
True.
It doesn't help us at all. Look, if we are honest to ourselves, and I believe that a good many people are honest to themselves, there is, outside Douala, there is hardly any part of Cameroon which is like the southwest, which is cosmopolitan, which welcomes people from everywhere. I worked in the northwest. At that time there were 5 divisions. I worked in 4. Even the 5th, which is Momo, I went there on circuit sessions for the High Court. I went there. The part of Cameroon that is open, that embraces people without asking about their origins is southwest. And when people they capitalize on a single mistake from southwest to make a lot of mistake, a lot of statements, it doesn't help us at all. And then we should also know that, make room for the young to grow.
True.
Even if today we are somewhere, we should make room for the young to grow, and the young from any part of the territory. Without that, we're just wasting our time. Condemnation alone is not enough. If you read the papers, what I am telling you is very, very conspicuous, very present.
This, without mincing words, you mean some of these people who fund this divide or who try to push maybe people from other regions away from taking anything seriously about this unity, are they mainly Northwesterners?
No, that's not what I've said.
Okay.
What I have said is that as much as, you see, people from the northern zone are much more committed.
Okay.
You will not bring on board people from the southern zone by condemnation, by...
Okay.
It's by making them feel that they are part of you.
By saying their non-involvement as being useless people.
That sell out, or the successive national chairman. I don't know who has sold out who. Because if you look at our history as Southern Cameroons, if you look at our history, if anybody has made mistakes in bringing us into the mess where we are today, 80%, maybe 90% will be from the northern zone.
Okay.
But our people hardly point that out. They still just believe that let bygones be bygones. But the slightest mistake somebody makes elsewhere is blown out of proportion.
But one thing that you can see too, I am one who has been very involved with this Northwest-Southwest issue to try to bring us together in a positive light. When you came to the US, I brought you to the Northwest, where I'm a member of the Northwest Funds Council with a title that they gave me as a shape. So what I am noticing is the timidity that is being pushed, especially on people who want to talk about this issue. I talk about, or I will try to castigate some of my Northwest brothers because of insensitivity, and my Southwest brothers of just being so docile and indifferent to everything. But when I do that, to even talk about trying to resolve the Northwest-Southwest problem, I'm called a Northwest hater. So does it mean that we are going to solve this problem without first recognizing that it exists and to try to look for solution? Not just to say that it exists, but to look for solution, for ways that we can solve the problem rather than postponing it to continue into the next generation.
That's exactly what I have said. Maybe I didn't make myself quite understood. There's a common saying that a disease diagnosed is half cured. If we shy away, we're just wasting our time. We are postponing. And you don't solve by postponing.
Sure.
And I like the English expression that you should not live for tomorrow what we can do today. Because you don't know, as the generations are growing and getting less and less informed about the past, you don't know what we may get tomorrow. And the very brother of yours would go join ISIS to fight you. Look at what's happening to America today, to Europe. So the quicker we recognize it and stop apportioning blame without going into the roots, the better for us. Otherwise, we'll be beating about the bush when the problem has we've not even started looking at it. Because without a diagnosis, we've not started looking at it. So let us admit it does exist, and indeed it does exist. When it has been admitted, this is the problem, how do we solve it? We look for a solution.
Yeah, some of the things that you said, 10-state federation, which most Anglophones who are militants of SCNC or whatever will be thinking of returning to the bicultural 2-state federation. And I think Munzo has always been a federalist.
Yes.
And I know from the days there was a trip that I made to the UN because he would refuse to go on the ticket of Cameroon Anglophone movement to join MUCOM. So I have no doubt of his position, even though there were times, like you said, that we would talk about independence being on the table, just in case some. So, but I see some level of animosity towards Munzo over an interview. I remember I called you and talked to you about it, and Mulanjo to seem to have carried that animosity to a certain level towards Munzo. So I don't know, what is it? What is the position of Munzo in the leadership of the political, Anglophone political, or Southern Cameroon's political structure? I met with him in the US when he came, and just him stating his position, that was really with federalist sentiment. Some of the SCNC people stormed out of the meeting that I had with him. And I think we were at the wake for Chivayamba with Munzo and Mullah, Joe, and Mullah basically passed without saying hello to Monzo.
I've said that as a political leader, I came out with a pamphlet in favor of 10-state federation.
When was that?
When I was at the presidential election in 2011.
Okay, so you've done that long.
Yeah,
okay.
The booklet came out in 2010 when I resigned from CPDM.
Okay.
I've also said that we want dialogue as recommended by the international bodies. If in the course of the dialogue we see that it is impossible for us to continue together, there's no question of 10-state federation, it's a question of the southern Cameroons standing on their own.
Complete autonomy.
That is there. But until dialogue fails, we feel that there will be more competition in a 10-state federation. And the apprehension of some people in the southern zone that there will be domination, and ask which one hurts more, if you are dominated by a foreigner or by a brother. You see, for now, what some people think is the best solution is a 10-state federation. Nothing will prevent the Southwest, what name it may adopt, or Northwest, from cooperating. Even now with the councils, there's room for councils to cooperate. Mm-hmm. But when you ask people who say bicultural or must go back to a 10-state federation, what effort they are making? I mean, you don't see. The few write-ups on the internet helps nobody. Okay. I mean, and will get nowhere. And the insults we receive on the internet and so on, instead helps to ostracize some of the people who would have given us support. So, a 10-state federation is my political stand. Dialogue is the primary stand. If the dialogue doesn't work, there's nothing wrong in our coming back to where we were. Because if there's no document, I don't know, I don't understand. Even in the thinking of the Cameroonese authorities, what legitimate right do they think they have over this territory if there's no document binding the two countries together? So if there's no document, we'll go back and we'll try to see how we can, live on our own.
So did you feel anything in you change or adjust when you accepted this appointment?
Well, let me tell you a word accepted, but as I've said, I applied to go back to the judiciary. So there's no question of accepting. It is as if somebody offered and I accepted. Okay. I applied in accordance.
It's good to make that clear, right?
Yes, that this is the law. And so I want to get back into the judiciary now that I'm no longer in parliament. My detachment has come to an end. So I went back on my own volition since I had asked to go back. On the day of the appointment itself, I didn't even know, since I'd stayed for 15 months and there was no answer, my application to go on early retirement was simply ignored. I was not expecting anything. I was with friends drinking when the telephone kept ringing and somebody said congratulations. I didn't know. Okay. So there was no feeling of something new to me. Even when I came back to the house, my wife was sitting here and the household, they were here listening to the appointments. They went on until 1 a.m. Mm-hmm. When I came in, it was as if nothing had happened. Nobody said congratulations. Nobody even said... In the house? No, nothing, because it meant nothing.
It's still this, is what was supposed to be.
What was supposed to be, yes.
So, let me ask you, Honorable, and I'm chatting with you. I have criticized you a little bit, and you know.
Yes, why not? I mean,
and my point of criticism.
A real friend is the one that tells you what is wrong.
I do respect you highly, but I criticize some aspects of your politics. Yes. And we know now you easily went into parliament on the CPDM ticket. You left parliament and could not go back when the CPDM ticket did not favor you or you were not on your side.
Yes.
Was that a political blow to you?
No, the first thing is that it's wrong to say I went easily on a CPDM ticket. I've said over and over before that when I left school, Young had just been appointed Minister of Vice Minister of Territorial Administration, and he came from a minority tribe. So there were a lot of speculations about me, and my people said, look, we keep just being there. Can you get in there and see what can be done for us? I said, no, I had to go through the ladder of my career. Those are the exact words I used consistently. Till I got to grade 4, and they said, okay, it's finished now, isn't it? And that's how I got in. To tell you the truth, they had to tell me on which the party ticket I must get into parliament. And so it came to pass. As to not going in after leaving CPDM, it's very clear that in Cameroon, nobody wins an election.
Okay.
I mean, the CPDM, not nobody, the CPDM doesn't win an election. I remember, the security reports. Till today, in the Ministry of Territorial Administration, PAP won the Ayah Council. The report sent in by the secret police and so on. You go to the Department of Political Affairs in that ministry, you meet in particular the Deputy Director. As recently as 2 weeks ago, he called me, we talked on the phone. The statistics they have show that we won the Ayah Council in 2013. But are we there? So it's not so much that we did not win. I don't look at it that way. We won in so many stations, everybody knows. But the results that were sent to Yaoundé were different. Even before, in the 2011 presidential election, I was third until the counting was over. Where votes came from for Adaman Damjoya and Gaga Haman to be ahead of me, only God knows. So it's not so much that, maybe my popularity dropped. No, on the contrary, people saw that just the fact that I resigned from CPDM and I was now formally opposing. I was at that time opposing inside, now from outside, and I was pointing out, and the road was coming, was enough, especially at the level of Ayah, for me to win in the neighborhood of 70%.
So you knew that going in. What were you hoping for?
Of course, to win the election.
You knew you couldn't.
With
the system.
In the Cameroonian, system, you will not be sure. But on the ground, I can assure you, even today, if we were to drive, as you were saying, to Konya, Manyemen, and so on, you will see, if the Joe heard that I was there, they would come out in big numbers.
Do you know that around all over Boya here, people don't know whom Paul Ayah is, but they know who Ayah Paul is.
Yeah.
What is the difference?
No, Cameroonians have this funny way. He himself, but that's, the president says Paul Biya, but elsewhere they say you should start with the family name. I don't know. But Ayah Paul came as a result of, since I got into parliament now, as Ayah Paul. I remember we went with Mr. Abuno to Fontaine.
You know that's my in-law, right?
Yes, of course. When we got to the hospital, the Catholic hospital there, we just stopped. I cannot remember what for. I wanted to take photographs. Even consultations stopped, and the doctors and the nurses came. There were some nursery school children there. They were showing them, that's the man. So Mr. Abuno came out and said, yes, so he's coming out now. That is Ayah Paul stepping out of the vehicle. And the children said, no, People were surprised. Say what? He said, no, they want but Ayah Paul. They don't want Paul Ayah. So the name from my electoral activities and so on came to be. In fact, even here, even when you say Ayah Paul, inside here, most people know me as chairman.
Okay.
I've been chairman, right from primary school. Even some of my ministers called me chairman. Yeah, so Ayah Paul came. That's the name they knew.
Yes.
When I came now to the political scene.
Yes.
And that's where in the judiciary we are quiet. Then I was vocal and people say, Ayah Paul. I think that's the thing.
So I'm calling you Honorable. You're also chief. You're traditional chief?
Everything.
You're honorable, you're chief justice.
Well, not exactly.
How are we going to combine all of those titles, because we are cheating some of them?
No, I prefer people calling me, simply chairman.
Chairman, okay.
Yes.
So chairman is good. It covers everything.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, Honorable Chairman. Let's just assume that the time you left Parliament and you came back, I know when they announced the results, the electoral results, which was parliamentary, and the PAP lost.
Yes.
You didn't contest, even in Manfred, you didn't contest all over, because you were in Umujok, right? Umujok, Upper Banyang, Umujok, and Akwaya, Manfred Central.
For council, I was.
Oh yeah. Upper Banyang and Manfred Central were together. Okay. So if, let's just say if you left with your ideas and the energy that you had. I remember Maxwell was in jail here, nobody cared. You were the one rallying people then and all the like, and you were spending a lot of time with these SCNC people and Molanjo and all those other stuff. You were talking ideas, you were looking at the future for Southern Cameroons then. Everything about La Republic and about Paul Biya seemed to be evil against Southern Cameroon's well-being. If you had the resources of your basic comfort, would you have returned?
Well, you're asking one question in so many other ways, in different ways. I have told you that as soon as my detachment came to an end, and in compliance with the law, I had not attained the age of retirement. It is I who compiled my papers and went and deposited in the ministry. My detachment is over, and by law, I have to come back. It's not a matter of whether people had to, the government had to pay me or otherwise. It's as a matter of law and a matter of right. I had to go back. Two alternatives. I want to go on early retirement. Okay. No. Okay, by law I have to come back. I want to come back. As simple as that. So the question of resources, as I said at the beginning when we started chatting, this is the fattest I've been all my life.
Oh really?
All my life. I am relaxed.
I thought you would be angry with that, trying to lose weight.
Not at all. It meant nothing. I've been sustained by my family all through. I have no problem. No. I may have a few problems with maybe my car. The children must take care of their own first. So outside that, I was not a desperate man. I think that if they look at land here, I have a small parcel of land which is most strategically located, Bakasina, Cameroon. Whatever little comes there keeps me going because the children are all on their own already. They are not demanding anything from me. On the contrary, when at times I just sit, my phone indicates, and somebody, one of them has sent me airtime, 5,000, 10,000, and so on. At times more than I need. Okay.
So honorable, and we have this thinking about dual nationality. Have you thought about it, and what would be your position on us legalizing dual nationality? 'Nationality, for especially a lot of Cameroonians in the diaspora?
The experience I have had is that Cameroonians in the diaspora come back here and invariably, almost invariably, let me not be too thorough, get into CPDM. Very few have come back here and they have stood their ground, much as they would want some of us to do what they cannot do. Dual nationality by itself is not bad. But in the context of Cameroon, we have to look at it very carefully. Because people abroad are better than those of us in here.
You mean materially?
Materially. Sorry, I should qualify it like that. Since the example so far as that they come and get into CPDM, if we are not careful and we put in the checks and balances, it simply means that CPDM may rule Cameroon forever if we go in very blindly. Because when they come with their resources and add to what CPDM has taken, unduly taken from the state coffers, the ordinary man, the outsider, will remain the outsider. Take for instance now, every year in the state budget, there's 1,500 million for sponsoring, funding political parties. Last year, for instance, my party, PAP, had 5 million out of 1,500 million. CPDM alone takes $1 billion plus, then SDF and whatever. Imagine that people, their foreign nationality, come in with the resources and add. In 2011, as another example, we had 20 billion for election. Mr. Biya disbursed 660 million to all the candidates, including himself. He shared in the 660 million. 19-point-something billion went to him, plus the one they came again and took from the little that he gave to the rest of us. Just imagine a situation like that. If he is to add support from people in the diaspora, if care is not taken and things are properly done, then CPDM will rule Cameroon forever.
Okay. And Chairman Boya, they seem to be very impressive, the way Boya is expanding. Have you noticed it? Some development is taking place in this country.
I don't know whether it is a Hijo or Bia that created the university center. As soon as I came here and I saw what had started for the university center, I said, even if nothing else comes, we are going to grow. And we are growing by leaps and bounds. A trailer gets into we are here with 600 bags of cement, and at times, if there's no cement elsewhere, it cannot take one full hour. You look at the mammoth buildings everywhere in Delhi. So we are expanding at a rate that is unbelievable.
I even have money with my wife behind us.
You can imagine.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I really appreciate this time. And I hope this is Christmas Ebini having a very warm chat with a friend and our intellectual giant, legal person, Honorable Ayah. I came to see him because there were a lot of misconception or conceptions and sentiments about recent development, and I was just going to do the right thing intellectually to grant him an opportunity to address some of those issues. I will criticize him too a little bit, but I don't want to be an armchair critic ever. I gave him the opportunity and I'm satisfied personally with the way he has addressed everything. Thank you very much.
So I'm really delighted. Thanks so much. You just kept